Have you ever met someone who seems incredibly mature, responsible, the rock for everyone around them, but inside they're exhausted, anxious, or emotionally disconnected? A lot of people don't realize this, but that personality often grew out of something called parentification. Parentification is one of the most overlooked childhood dynamics in psychology, and it happens when a child is forced to become the caregiver instead of being cared for. Today, we're breaking down what parentification really is, how it rewires a child's brain, the invisible emotional wounds it leaves, how it shapes adult identity, relationships, and self-worth, and how someone can actually heal from it. This is the psychology of parentification, explained deeply, clearly, and in a way that finally makes sense. Parentification isn't just growing up fast. It's when a child is placed in a role reversal emotionally, physically, or both. Instead of being able to rely on their parent for guidance, they become the emotional anchor, the problem solver, the therapist, or even the substitute parent for siblings. There are two forms. 1. Instrumental parentification. This is when a child has to take on adult responsibilities: cooking, cleaning, babysitting siblings, handling bills, translating for parents, solving grown-up problems. It feels like being the house manager at age 10. 2. Emotional parentification. This one is much more subtle and more damaging. This happens when a child becomes the parent's therapist, the parent's emotional support, the parent's confidant, the parent's regulator. The child ends up absorbing adult stress, adult fears, adult emotional weight. They become the person who calms the parent down, who listens to the parent's relationship problems, who stabilizes the family dynamic. This turns the child into someone who can read a room instantly, but can't read their own emotions at all. Parentification usually happens because the parent is unavailable in some way. Mental health issues, substance abuse, chronic stress, divorce, emotional immaturity, trauma, being overwhelmed, lack of support, cultural expectations. When the adult falls apart or cannot perform their role, the child steps in, not because they want to, but because the family system needs them to. And here's the core psychological twist. Children adapt to survive, not to thrive, but to survive. So the brain develops traits needed to keep the household functioning, even if the child's own needs are ignored. A parentified child grows up in chronic stress, even if the home looks normal on the outside. Here's how their brain changes. 1. The amygdala becomes overactive. The amygdala is the threat detector of the brain. When a child has to constantly monitor the parent's mood, the stability of the household, whether the siblings are okay, whether the parent is upset, the amygdala becomes extremely sensitive. This creates hypervigilance, always scanning, always alert, always anticipating danger, always predicting reactions. Even as adults, they can't relax. They carry that tension everywhere. 2. The prefrontal cortex overdevelops in responsibility. The prefrontal cortex handles planning, decision-making, and control. Parentified kids become little adults, so this part of the brain matures in a way that makes them organized, responsible, logical under pressure, good at anticipating needs, but at the same time, it becomes overburdened. They become adults who can function in chaos, but collapse emotionally when it's time to rest. 3. Emotional processing gets suppressed. In a normal childhood, kids learn to regulate their emotions by parents soothing them. In parentification, the child must soothe others, so their own emotional development gets paused. This creates emotional numbness, difficulty expressing feelings, guilt for needing comfort, confusion about what they actually feel. It's not that they're cold, it's that they were never allowed to be vulnerable. Children need safety, structure, guidance, emotional responsiveness, play, freedom to make mistakes. Parentified children lose all of this, and the brain learns something painful. My needs don't matter. My feelings can wait. I'll deal with it later. This becomes their adult identity. They say things like, I don't want to bother anyone. I'm fine. I can handle it. I don't need help. I don't know what I feel. Because for them, being strong was the only option. One of the deepest psychological effects is becoming the invisible child. This happens because their needs weren't acknowledged. Their emotions weren't mirrored. Their childhood was overshadowed by adult responsibilities. They grew up feeling like they're only valuable when they're helping. Their worth comes from fixing things. Being seen is dangerous. Being vulnerable is risky. This creates an adult who's emotionally self-contained, but starving for connection. Strong but exhausted. Capable but resentful. They are the person everyone relies on, but no one truly knows. This form creates hyperempathy, extreme sensitivity to tone, to predict emotional changes. Becoming the emotional sponge of the family, the child becomes responsible for the parent's emotional stability, and the brain adapts by becoming overly attuned, overly responsible, overly empathetic, overly cautious. As an adult, they attract people who need fixing, need emotional support, lack stability, drain them, not because they want to, but because their brain is wired to seek that role. This version creates perfectionists, high achievers, adults who can do everything, people who feel uncomfortable letting others help, chronic overworkers. The child becomes the manager of the home, and that identity follows them into adulthood. They don't know how to rest without guilt. Their baseline is exhaustion, their normal is pressure. Parentified children often develop these attachment styles. Anxious attachment. Because they learned, love is tied to responsibility. Affection is conditional. Their value is in their usefulness. Avoidant attachment. Because they learned, relying on others is dangerous. Emotions are overwhelming. Independence is the only safe place. Disorganized attachment. If the parent was chaotic or unpredictable, the child learns, I need you, but I can't trust you. You're my comfort and my danger. This creates confusing, intense adult relationships. Parentified adults feel guilty for resting, asking for help, saying number, prioritizing themselves, making a mistake, emotionally breaking down, leaving the family's burdens behind. This is neurological guilt, built into the wiring of their childhood. They still feel responsible for everything, even when they aren't. Parentified children grow into adults who are deeply empathetic, calm in crisis, natural leaders, highly intuitive, extremely reliable, emotionally intelligent, resilient. These are real strengths, but they were built from survival, not choice. Healing is learning how to have these strengths without the pain attached to them. Healing requires recognizing the role you were forced into, understanding that it wasn't normal and it wasn't your job, releasing responsibility that was never yours, letting the adult burdens return to the adults, reconnecting with your own needs, learning that you're allowed to feel, rest, and be cared for, rebuilding boundaries, especially with family members who still expect you to be the caretaker, learning to receive help, not as weakness, but as a human need. Therapies that help: inner child work, attachment-focused therapy, somatic trauma work, schema therapy, especially self-sacrifice, and hyper-responsibility schemas. Parts work, IFS. Healing parentification is not about becoming weaker. It's about allowing yourself to finally be human. If any part of this video felt familiar, you're not alone. Millions of adults walk around with invisible responsibility wounds, and understanding them is the first step toward healing. If you like this content and want to see more, hit that like button and subscribe so more people can see this. Also, comment down below, did you have to emotionally step up as a child?